All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Taralyn and Cyler Varnum. It's January 12th, 2026, and we're at the Varnum Vineyards at Amity. And thank you both so much for joining us today. The first question to get started, and either one of you can take this and run with it, is why wine?
I mean, I got into wine kind of on accident, I would say. It was just, I was doing study abroad in Australia, and I was there, pursuing my degree. It was in a different form of agriculture. I was there to watch birds and explore sort of the wild country of Australia, and this was kind of sort of right during the yellowtail craze, which is an interesting thing. My parents never really drank wine except for Thanksgiving, and I remember right when yellowtail hit the market, it was very well promoted. It was high value. It was something that that ended up on our Thanksgiving table, and then I went to Australia the year after that and was just aware that there was wine, and kind of happened into a winery at some point on the journey and thought it was interesting. It had lots of elements to it that were alluring to me. It seemed more mature. It seemed, sort of this classy thing. And as a 21-year-old, that's sort of one of those things that, at least at the time, was alluring to me. I guess it still is. So I ended up going to 75 wineries in Australia over the 6 months that I was there. It turned out after 3 or 4 of them that I kind of could tell what I was tasting. I was getting feedback from the people in the tasting rooms, and I came home and decided to change my professional direction from, at the time I was studying aquaculture, fish farming. I wanted to save the world through sustainable protein, and decided that I could easily take what I'd learned about plants and animals and bugs and soils and climate and water quality and apply that towards sort of the basic concept of viticulture, but knew that I didn't know anything about wine, and so I started reading and drinking and meeting people that worked in the industry. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, which is not a huge wine community, but there was a small group of wine professionals there that met for blind tasting groups once a week, and that kind of launched me into the industry. And I'm trying to think to get up to date. So I started working at sort of, for at least locals would recognize Red Hills Market. It was the equivalent of something like a Red Hills Market in Tucson, Arizona. I worked in the wine shop there and also pulled pints and helped serve pizza, and worked with a great sommelier there, Andy Ramirez, and he got me hooked up with Mary Grace, who is sort of one of my main mentors in the industry, and worked with a lot of the other greats that were wine reps in the area that met and tasted, and started working for a German wine importer the next year, and that's kind of where a lot of our focus, at least my focus and interest in wine is very much in German wines, so Rieslings, obviously Spätburgunders or Pinot Noirs. And then Germany is also the largest producer of sparkling wine in the world, which is kind of the core of our interests here at Varnum as well. And then I met my wife teaching classes, German wine classes.
You skipped some stuff.
I did.
You went to Lemelson. You planted a test vineyard. Yeah.
Well, I guess so when I got back from Australia, actually, I was like, well, do I want to make wine or I just want to work in the industry? And so the first thing I did was make wine, and I didn't do it from a kit. I'm always maybe been a little bit of a purist when it comes to my passions. So I actually found Arizona grapes to make wine with. I actually sourced fruit from, I believe, the highest elevation vineyard in North America. It's planted at the very southeastern tip of Arizona, up in the Dragoon Mountains at like 7,000 foot elevation, north-facing slopes, very rocky. This eccentric hippie guy had found this property and was like, this reminds me of Côte Rôtie. And he planted Grenache and Syrah up there. It's now actually considered one of the top vineyards in Arizona, but he let it go to one of the main producers there, who makes a single vineyard. I think it's called Colibri Vineyard, which is a hummingbird in Spanish. And yeah, I made a Grenache Syrah, mostly Syrah. So I was obviously obsessed with Shiraz coming from Australia. So it was 90% Syrah, and he convinced me to put a little bit of Grenache in it. And we picked 140 pounds of fruit, my sister and I, and hand destemmed it and foot trod it in paint buckets, and I made 45 bottles of a wine that I still have, 2007 vintage. I figured I should probably learn how to make wine the correct way. This was in sort of the recession of '08, which you don't realize when you're in your early 20s. You're just like, well, times are hard. I got out of college. Like, this is the way everybody is. But I applied to every winery in the Willamette Valley and I got a call back from 2. And one of those was Anthony King of Limmelson, who's one of my main mentors in the industry. Still someone that I respect and will share information with him time to time when we have a chance, but learned how to make wine the correct way. He's obviously very well respected in the area. The very technical UC Davis way of doing things. Everything is very clean, very precise, very measured. I'm glad that I had that as a background to build on. And then, let's see. Yeah, and then worked in German wine, importing in Tucson. I was a sommelier for a short period of time. I got to see kind of that side of the industry. I did wholesale for a little bit, kind of had a relatively well-rounded background in all aspects of wine before I met my wife and we decided to move up here and start our brand. And so
Opened a wine bar
we opened a wine bar
in Tucson.
for a week. And then my partner came in and told me that I was done, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It was another one of the reasons that we ended up here.
Yeah.
You don't take on business partners unless you're married to them.
Yeah, well, or you have a contract.
That's it. Contracts are also helpful. Yeah.
The stuff's written down.
Make sure it's written down.
It's real.
So, but yeah, we had the fortune of getting a sort of a custom crush set up at Medici, which is another historic property here.
In 2014.
I refer to it as the frat house of wine, a very rundown facility with a lot of history. Everything worked most of the time, but we were also surrounded by a slew of other winemakers with different ideologies and backgrounds, and having that opportunity, again, that collaborative aspect of what the Willamette Valley is known for, to be able to bounce ideas off. So I'm really glad that we had that opportunity, because for us as a brand as well, we have our own ideals and our own interests when it comes to styles and winemaking, but being able to develop them sort of without it being, I'm not copying a paradigm. I have a basis of information that I learned from my own winemaking, from working at Limmelson, and through kind of developing my own processes, while being able to bounce ideas off of other winemakers in the area. And then we built up a little bit of production for the 5 years there, and then had the opportunity to buy this property that we're on here. We took over farming. This vineyard also has some history. It was planted by Don Byard in 1978. This is a high elevation, east facing Riesling, Pinot Noir, and Chardonnay vineyard. We had not been farmed since, oddly enough, the recession of '08. When we took it over in, was it 2018?
2018, yeah.
2018.
We were like, yeah, it's dead. Nothing here. It's not worth anything.
It had no value, which is how we were able to afford it.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
there was some wire and some posts,
lot of
and
blackberries.
there was a 40-foot tall, about 1 acre blackberry patch in the middle, and with chainsaws and weed saws and
Eventually a
hacksaws,
tractor.
and eventually a bulldozer. We were able to get it cleaned up, and we made our first vintage in 2019 off of the property. 2020, actually. It was 2020 was the first vintage.
2020. Yep, and then 2020 happened.
And then 2020 happened. But yeah, we have a very rudimentary, basic, I would call it old school winery. We don't have any new equipment. Everything we buy is used, or basically we call it a glorified garage winery. Again, kind of attuned to our outlook in wine, which is that it's a beverage. It's something that is meant to be part of your life, not necessarily change your life. And so we approach our winemaking sort of in that same aspect, where the wines want to make themselves.
Yeah, okay, so I might disagree on that one. I would say, while our style is very, it's made to drink, don't overthink, but I would say the style that we make our wine isn't that way. It's whatever the vintage and the grapes give us is what the wine that we produce is, and so it should be very simple in that you're tasting the harvest. So we're not trying to manipulate it or overthink it, right? Don't overthink the grapes. They are what they are from that vintage. We make it, and so we both have that science background, and then also the training from Andrew Davis, and then Anthony King. I said Andrew Davis. I was like, that's another.
Yeah, we've talked to Andrew Davis too.
Also, that's a different. That's sparkling wine, but Anthony. But I would say our winemaking is very hands off.
Yeah, we don't have a lab. The only thing I test for is sugar in our wines. Occasionally we'll look at the pH or the TA of a wine. My wife is a chemist as well, which she'll get into at some point, and talk about having high school students doing TAs and pHs on juice samples.
It's real life, right? Here in the Willamette Valley.
This is something that might actually be pertinent to you at some point. But yeah, we don't add yeast to our wines unless they get stuck. Actually, it's interesting. For the first time in, I think it's been 7 years since I've added yeast to something other than champagne, of course. And I've got 1 or 2 barrels that have just gotten stuck. But yeah, it's one of those things that now, Ben, this will be our 13th year of making wine. That you become comfortable with your process. You continue to, obviously, we do challenge and do new things and new varietals and new vineyards and new techniques, but really just becoming kind of confident and comfortable in the fact that the wine will find a way to make itself, and it always is going to be a more unique expression and something that we can always either blend or produce on its own and share with guests. One of the other things that's been really enlightening is coming after the fires of 2020 is realizing that I don't dictate people's palates. It's one of those sort of other like reaffirming things as a winemaker, is realizing that like I've made wines that I think are awful and people have told me are the best thing they've ever had.
Yes. And he means by me. Those people are mostly me. I'm like, what did you do to this? And then people love it. I'm like, never mind. Don't let me change what you're doing in the future, because my palate is different than other people's palates, right?
I think it's an important thing to realize, again, that wine is a beverage and that it's something that is very personal and unique to each individual person, each vintage, each varietal, each person consuming it, each pairing. And it's infinitely complex and exciting in that way. But it's also something that we don't, as a producer, as a maker, and even as a leader in sort of innovation in wine and different styles, like I don't dictate what people drink. Like it's been really helpful for me as a winemaker to make the wines that I love, but to also make wines that I'm like, well, this isn't my favorite, but people love it, and I want to make people happy as well with what I'm making. So not being stuck on some idealism of what wine is and what it has to be and what people have to consume, but realizing that we make something that is for people to enjoy.
And I think it makes a big difference that the winemaker is also in front of the customer. So you're getting that immediate feedback. In a lot of the larger wineries, you hire a winemaker, you hire a marketing team, then you have a tasting room staff, and we are all of those things. And so there's really the conversations are just in our own heads and with each other, versus having to have an email chain or have an idea and then hope it gets accepted in a conference. So if we are seeing a change in our customer base or hearing other things, it's pretty immediate in how we then plan our next year or the next vintage and what ideas might come up. And we can pretty quickly change what we're doing. I mean, I think the word pivot got overused in 2020, but for us, like, we pivoted hard and quickly because we were able to. It was just the two of us, right? Like, things shut down and opened up and shut down and opened up, and we did the exact same thing. Whereas a lot of people were, they were really bogged down instead by staffing and what is it going to look like and the cleaning procedures. And it was like, well, we just talked about them and then did it and opened and closed as needed. And and I think that's the benefit of it just being the two of us doing everything. It's also overwhelming sometimes, but at the same time, what we were going for.
I mean, to get you caught up on your history. How did you get into wine?
We have a very different story. Well, his journey started at 21. Mine started much earlier, to the point that I've now realized that I think it was actually being imprinted on me at a very young age. So my family, I had my great-grandmother lived in Portland, and my grandparents would bring me here quite frequently and take me with them on their wine tours and cheese factory and to the beach. And so my time in the Willamette Valley started much earlier, even though I'm from Arizona from my whole life. So I think back, like, why do you like wine, And you're like, I don't know why I started drinking wine. Why did I choose that? And I think it must just be imprinted on, like, that was what we did to relax, honestly. Well, my grandparents did, and I spent a lot of time with them. My parents weren't very big drinkers. Again, like, just the holidays was the only time, and New Year's Eve. And then it wasn't really wine. But with my grandparents, it was. My dining room table that I grew up with is actually covered in wine labels. So they had taken the labels off and then made the table out of it. So there's like 70s and 80s Erath and all those. And so it really was just like subliminal messaging, I guess, that they had no idea they were doing. But in college, I was kind of like the wine girl. I would bring wine to the party and play beer pong. Like, these are my cups. They have wine in it. Yours have beer in it. And so wine has just always been my preferred beverage over others. And then eventually, I've been a teacher for 18 years. That was my career as a chemistry teacher. And, I would come home at night and relax with a glass of wine. So a lot of our branding now is the porch lineup, and that kind of stems from the idea of like, I come home from work and I enjoy a glass of wine on the porch and kind of, decompress from the day of teaching, which is a completely different type of brain space that you're in. So eventually in about 2011, so I made it through the '08, right? Someone else retired and I took their job. I got very lucky. And then in 2011, I took a second job waitressing because I really wasn't actually making much money as a teacher in Arizona with my master's. I was making just as much money waitressing 3 nights a week as I was as a full-time teacher. And at that time, then I was like, what am I doing with my life? I really had this passion for wine. I was a really good server. And then the sommelier movie came out, Somm. And I was like, this is my calling. I'm going to become a somm. And so for my New Year's resolution in 2013, I signed up for wine education classes. And Cyler happened to be the teacher at that wine shop he was working at.
Lo and behold, at Tucson only had one wine education class.
And so that's how we met. And then those tasting groups he was talking about that he was a part of, he invited me to those, and I started going to those. And eventually, somewhere in there, we have a love story about wine, and it brought us together. And then we were like, well, we actually want to make wine, and we don't want to do that in Arizona. So I had at the same time been doing a summer research internship that was also partnered here. So it was like an Arizona and an Oregon thing. I'm sure the name of it will come back to me in a second. But all of the teachers then would present their research from the summer at a conference in San Diego. And, we were in the hot tub with all these teachers, and they told me how much money they were making here in Oregon versus what I was making in Arizona. And I was like, never mind, we can do this. I'm going to move to Oregon and be a teacher, and he's going to make wine. Everybody thought I was crazy. I quit my job in Arizona. The timelines in Arizona for the teachers are a little different than in Oregon, so like the end of the year. So even though they hadn't even posted jobs here in Oregon, I was like, I'm a science teacher. I'm going to get a job tomorrow. So I quit my job in Arizona, waited for things to post here. I got a job at Tigard High School teaching chemistry and physics and astronomy. That was a new thing. I was like, well, I've never even taken an astronomy class, but I can read a book. So I guess I'll teach myself astronomy right before I teach other people. And that's what I did. And then at the same time, thankfully, Lemelson, it was honestly actually really hard to move here during that time. They were like, who are you from Arizona? I've quit my job. He had also just got a job. You skipped over the fact that you worked at
Angeles.
He worked at Angeles State as a tasting manager for 5 years. Yeah, we can get back to that. So he got a job there. I got a job actually also working at Ponzi for the summer when they had just opened their brand new tasting room, which was a beautiful way to spend the summer of 2014.
We got to do late night after hours bocce and glass of rosé.
Right at the end of the night. Anyway, so we just left. But getting a place to stay in 2014 as two younger people without jobs, we couldn't find, no one believed us. So thankfully, finally, I was like, well, Lemelson has some properties, right? And so they actually let us stay at the Sturmer House, and then we eventually moved to the Brown House for a year and a half.
The iconic Brown House, which I'm sure has been mentioned in these interviews many times before.
So we got to live there. It was glorious. Just living the wine life in a vineyard.
Going on walks every night. I remember the summer with our dog through the Johnson Vineyard and the Sturmer Vineyard before that.
It was pretty picturesque. So, and then Cyler helped out at Harvest there as well. Kind of was like an exchange for living there. And
grew up in construction and was renovating sort of the bathrooms and doing some upkeep on the houses as well. So I fixed the downstairs bathroom at the Brown House.
Yes, that's also a thing. But yeah, 2014 then was just like this picturesque, like us, we just fell in love, we're engaged, we move here, we take walks in the vineyard. I'm working at Ponzi, he's working at Angela, and then I started a new job in the fall. So from like May to September was just like, I don't know, it was really awesome. But then real life hits, right? So then I started teaching. We find a place, that's when we found Amity. We ran into oh my goodness. Chris Berg. I had Eric Berg. Chris Berg.
It was actually Jim Gullo who told me to reach out to Chris Berg, and Chris Berg's a wild man as well, but he definitely learned a lot from him, and he helped us get started at Amity.
Yeah, and all the things. So I kept teaching. Eventually, we got married, bought a house in Dayton. We knew we kind of wanted to move out this way, right? Everything closer to Portland is expensive. Teaching in Tigard was great. I mean, it's a great school to teach at, but it was an hour commute from Carlton every day, and I got pregnant, and so I was like, I do not want to do this. 2 hours of my life now with children. So we bought the house then in Dayton, and then a position out here in Amity opened up at the high school. So I applied for that, got that job, and then I would say a year and a half later, 2 years, then we knew we wanted to move towards Amity and have land, and so we just started looking, and this popped up. It's actually interesting. We were originally interested in the 100 Sons property where they are now, and they were here, and it didn't work out at those properties, and we ended up in the opposite properties. So, none of which we knew until like afterwards, but we were like, oh, hey, yeah, we looked at that property, and I looked at that property, and then we ended up buying the opposite properties. So that was an interesting like crossover with 100 Sons at the exact same time. But yeah, then I taught at Amity for 9 years as the business grew at the same time. And then I have a second son, also born in 2019. So 2016, 2019, we had 2 boys. And then last year, I guess it wasn't just last year. For a few years, it's been just growing of like, maybe this is too much. And, and 2020 happened in the middle of it as well. But I decided to retire. So that's a nicer way of saying I quit teaching. It had never been our goal for me to step away from teaching. Our idea was always that the 2 of us would be able to manage everything. But, at the size we're at now, it's just a lot to do all of the things and then also have a full-time career and children. So we're thankful that we're at a position where I was able to step away from my job because that was our main source of income while growing the business. So you can tell the joke about how to be rich and how to make.
Oh yeah, it's a common joke in the industry is the way to make a small fortune in the wine industry is to start with a large one.
Yes. So.
I also grew up in an entrepreneurial household in construction and real estate a little bit, not large scale, but always kind of I take on challenges, and to me, the idea of making a business that's successful in an area, in an industry that what I'm passionate about, the wine industry, but one that is notorious for not really being fantastic making money.
So a lot of people, we actually don't have any investors. Everything has been funded just through my teaching career, and I mean, he did have the job at Angela, but that was
initial investment. Yeah. I think we spent like $5,000 to get started.
Year, yeah.
We made 200 cases of wine. Yeah.
Something like
and
that.
then you have to sell it in order to make more. And that's always kind of been our motto.
Yeah. That was one of the things we learned on earlier. 2016 was a bumper vintage, right? And look at all this free fruit on the market. And we learned really quick, like free fruit is not free. So you got to put it in a vessel, you got to bottle it, you got to label it, you got to sell it. Yeah. So, this last year that occurred again, there was even more fruit on the market that you could basically name your price. And while it was very tempting, we had already learned, thankfully, in 2016 that is not something we should take advantage of. So while it was really heartbreaking to see all this fruit not be purchased, we know as winemakers that would be a cost that we would be taking on ourselves if we were to save the grapes. So we didn't do that.
We still try our best to help, but
still try our best. Yeah, I mean
not as much though as in some vintages. The first started happening in 2024, no 2022, 23. It's actually 22 that it started because everybody thought there was frost, and then everybody went out and bought more fruit, and it turns out the frost was not as bad as they thought it was going to be, and then everybody ended up making 30 to 40% more wine.
Right. Yeah. So I guess, the why wine was we both have very different why wine stories, then brought us together in 2014. We moved here and we had a 5-year goal. I'm realizing now, we realize the importance of having a goal that you're like really committed to, because, we had a 5-year goal of owning a winery, living on a vineyard, and having a house, and we achieved it in 5 years. And then what? And so now you kind of get in this okay, well, we did it. We're gonna grow this. We're gonna enjoy it because we had worked our butts off. And then we have 2 small children, and then COVID happens. And I feel like, we're kind of in the process of figuring out what's our next 5-year to 10-year goal.
We have an 8-year plan, don't we?
Is the number one thing that we're discussing right now, because it really does drive you. It's a very well, we make this decision, what the route is because you've set your goal on this thing, and then to have achieved what we wanted, and then, well, can we just enjoy it? Should we just enjoy it? Should we keep running because we had been working so hard to achieve that? And then it kind of feels weird to all of a sudden say I don't have another 5-year goal. And so we've kind of been living that, and built this tasting room a year ago. So I guess that was the next thing we did. We opened this in November.
Construction project almost every
year. Yeah, a construction project. So thankfully he's very handy. He's always adding more and more constructions. We made the big outdoor area that we have here on the vineyard the year before that. And put in a playground, because we have a lot of our customers or even club members come with their family, and so having an area that also our kids can use, but then other people's kids can use at the same time and enjoy having the picnic outside. And I feel like that was another important thing of just in 2020, a lot of wineries moved away from that model. The idea of just going out and enjoying wine country and taking a picnic and taking the family, that unfortunately just kind of got cut off and never came back. I don't feel like that recovered. And so that was something that, was so influential in my childhood that I wanted to preserve, that we still do here. So it should be open and friendly, and everyone should be able to just decide on a Sunday that it's nice outside and they want to go enjoy wine country. So however we can make that easiest as possible and remove the barriers to entry, that's our goal.
Always been a goal for us.
That's our goal, yeah. Made to drink, don't overthink. Just enjoy. Wine can be a part of your life. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can drink it on a Tuesday. But it has to be affordable to be able to do that. It has to be accessible. So
I want to talk about sort of learning wine a little bit. Cyler, I want to start with you. Tell me about the process for you. Once you discovered wine was something you were interested in, tell me about the process of learning it, both learning about it and developing a palate. What did you find interesting about learning about wine, and what did you find to be sort of successful ways that you kind of found out more about the wine world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is something to having, obviously just biologically, and physiologically, our palates are different. So I think that there's something to that, having the ability to smell and taste. It's an interesting thing. I'll go back and think about the fact that as a kid, I was a very picky eater, and realizing that my mom now realizes that she was raising a winemaker. It's sort of it's like a sick joke, but it's she's like, you seasoned this differently, didn't you? I can tell. And you're like, I didn't measure out how many grams of salt I added, right? But I'd say that I've always been sort of a creative-minded person. I need something that entertains, that keeps me interested, and wine is one of those things that's worked for me. It's every vintage, every varietal, every winemaker, every soil type. It's just always different, and that aspect of the diversity and the nuance of wine was something that was always interesting to me. And then in terms of learning it, I've never been big on reading, but I tell people that ask me all the time, do you read a lot? And I was like, no, but I read wine. I will sit down and I will read 1,000 pages of everything that there is to know about wine. And I'm also lucky that I retain information. I have to read something once and I pretty much have it memorized. I can taste something once and I will have it memorized. And so that's made it easier for me to be a winemaker, recognizing that when I'm making a wine, the things that I smell, the things that I taste are in line with things that I've smelled and tasted before. when I'm making a varietal. At this point now, I'm really fascinated with just tasting the raw fruit itself. I like to get a new grape varietal every year to work with. So I got Grenache for the first time this year, and like just tasting a Grenache berry and being like, yep, that's why it tastes like Grenache. A buddy of mine got Barbera this year, and I was like, wow, that's why it tastes like Barbera. But yeah, I think that blind tasting helps a lot if you want to develop your palate. Of course, not being able to look at something at label value, or what color it is, or what the varietal is, or what the region is, or what the year is, and really like thinking through that process was really helpful for me to develop my palate. I do think that reading, if that's your skill, reading and memorizing the regions and the characteristics, you can learn that way. I know for Tara that travel helps a lot, being able to see the actual region. It's never been a problem for me. Like we
have very different learning styles. Yeah. From the teacher side of me, I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk about how I don't have a photographic memory and I can't do that. So my wine education side is different.
Yeah.
But you self-taught everything you know about wine. You've never taken a class about wine.
Nope.
Never. He's just read from books, and then Anthony King,
books,
and you did plant. You haven't talked about how you planted a vineyard, a test vineyard. You learned from that. I mean, that's a big.
It's again, you can spend $10,000 to go back to school, or you can spend $10,000 planting a vineyard, and you're probably going to learn something.
Yes.
So I planted a little experimental vineyard in Arizona when I was 22. I planted 8 different varietals, and 3 of them died immediately, and 2 of them did okay, and then I think
the birds came.
You realize that when you're in the desert, that really is an extreme place to be, and that
you just planted fruit for the wildlife.
Yeah, the lizards, the woodpeckers, even the rattlesnakes are trying to eat your stuff. There's just nothing else to eat, so it's like it was a crazy experience. But I learned how to prune, I learned how to plant, I got the basic idea. I realized that like there is value to the hard work that people have put in developing wine regions. Like, this was a terrible idea to be the first person to plant grapes in this hillside in Arizona. It probably would have been nice if somebody had come and done it before and realized this is a pain, but these are the advantages. So I knew one of the many reasons that we're in the Willamette Valley is that we knew that it was possible to grow grapes well here, but also the type of wine that we wanted to make. Right. One of the reasons we left Arizona was the types of wines that they make there are just not the types of wines that we generally lean towards. We're more into cool climate, acid-forward whites, aromatic wines, lighter-bodied reds, bubbles. So.
Yeah, we did a lot of research on all the different regions, what types of wine was there, what we want to drink, what was the price of the land, what was the winemaking community like, what was the barriers to entry, how big is it, how is tourism doing there. So it wasn't just that I decided in a hot tub we would move to Oregon, right? Like, it was kind of that. I mean, that's sounds cool, but then we spent a lot of time, and when we first got together, we traveled and went to how many wine regions did we go to in California? I feel like we really wanted to, that's the closest thing to Arizona, right? We had both been to California many times, so we went there, and then we came up here in...
Yeah, we came up here in
spring of 14? Yeah, first spring break.
To move here in May.
Yes, and then we were like, yep, this is the place. So it was a very quick decision. Well, and I had to decide in March, spring break is the time that the Arizona schools give out their contracts, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to decide, sign my contract or not. Are you returning? So after spring break, we came back. It's like, I'm not returning. We're moving to Oregon. Just everybody was nice. It was springtime here. Everything's turning 1,000 shades of green, and I don't know. It just felt right. So that's what we did.
We got off subject though.
It's okay.
We're supposed to be talking about.
I am talking about education. We're educating ourselves about different places. We'd also looked at Germany. We haven't talked much about our German history. Like, I actually applied to teach in Germany, and then 30-ish days after starting at Tiger, they got back to me and said, "We'd love for you to come teach here." And I was like, "Ooh, sorry, I just moved to another state and took another job and can't come teach in Germany now."
That's a shame.
And then we also looked at New York, so the Finger Lakes region as well, which I guess I skipped that part of my wine journey. Unknowingly as well, my grandmother moved as her retirement. She moved to upstate New York and bought a house that she ran a bed and breakfast out of on Keuka Lake, right next to Dr. Constantine and all these amazing wine growing regions, so amazing wineries. And so I guess I started drinking wine a lot earlier than Cyler did, and had a lot of access to it. And it was just around at the house and my family. There's a lot of different opinions. Are you on the European model? When can you start drinking, etc.? But I feel like wine was definitely just an acceptable, like, it's wine. It's not, you're not getting drunk on hard alcohol out there. I don't know. So everybody can have their own opinion about that, but for me, it was also just exposure to taste and enjoying a drink and enjoying meals and hanging out with the family and my cousins and when you're in a beautiful place doing it. I don't know. So I have a lot of fond memories of that too. But so Riesling also was the gateway wine, I think, for me. It is for a lot of people. It's sweet, have the blue nun, and then eventually you're taught, right? So then you start like, okay, I'm gonna take wine more seriously. You're taught that you're supposed to like big red, bold wines. So I switched over, and then Two Buck Chuck came in. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how, on a teacher's salary, trying to figure out how to not have red stains on my teeth, because I was just all of that mega purple, is in there. And then finally coming back, later now as we've become winemakers, like, no, it's okay to enjoy sweet wines. It's okay. I feel like that's a really important thing. But you talk about education. So I would say in that, I had been drinking wine and I knew I liked wine, but I didn't know why. And I knew there was much more to know, which is why I signed up for the education classes that Cyler was teaching. Very quickly also, just from going every Wednesday, I went to a wine tasting with like 10, 12 people get together and we would blind, right? It was blind tasting. And you have this systematic guide to, at the time we were using the Court of Sommelier's guide, tasting guide, which is very similar to WSET. And we were using that as a guide. And I would say within 1 month, definitely by 3 months, I was able to determine the very basic things, like what is the major varietal out of, the major 5 whites and 5 reds, and then is it Old World, New World? And it was just with that systematic, like, what are you tasting? Why are you tasting it? What causes that? Over and over and over again. For me, was important to now know what I was drinking and did I like it? It became very like, don't let anyone else tell you what you should drink or like the recommendation that someone gives you, because you have to be able to know what you eat. Are you going to like it? Just because they like it doesn't mean you're going to like it. What are you eating? And so that became kind of the education side there. I would say I didn't do a ton of reading or anything at that time.
Until recently.
And then when we started making wine, I was like, okay, we're going to make wine. And then I found out really quickly that it was just a glorified janitor's job. And it was cold and rainy, and we're up until 2 a.m. spraying things off for the 3rd time. And I got to go to work the next day. So Cyler is the winemaker. I'm very aware of how wine is made, and I will jump in and assist with the winemaking. But Cyler is the maker. We have a joke right now too of like, who's the winemaker? Because in the bigger ones, he would be the cellar master, right? He physically makes the wine, and then I come along and I taste everything, and I'm like,
and said, do this, move
yes,
that over there,
this is great. What did you do? I like this one a lot. Change the right. So, but I would say that alone, the fact that we do all that together, really has an impact on the end product of our wine. A lot of what we have is then driven by our tastes, and do I want to sit down on the porch and drink it? And I feel like then our following is very similar in that we have wines that you could just sit down and drink. We've made some more serious ones that are also appreciated, but I would say that there's a lot of serious ones in the valley, and we're not
anti-serious wine.
Yes, we are not the serious
wine. It's not our goal.
Yeah. It's not our goal to make the best wine in the world.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to strive for. But at the same time, like, whose opinion is that it's the best wine in the world? The best wine in the world is whatever you're enjoying on your dinner table at any given time. That's the best wine in the world. So we just want to make wine that...
I feel like the amount of stress and energy that goes into making what would be the best wine in the world, you can taste it in the wine, and it deters from the ability to enjoy it. It's not that it isn't. Again, it's the winemaker and the wine professional side of my brain versus the wine consumer side of my brain, and realizing that, like, you can appreciate fine art. I know what great wine tastes like, but I don't care. It's not my type of art.
Yeah.
It's not my type. It's in that art. That's the thing is wine is not art. It's a consumable. It's
Yeah, and so then you're afraid to open that best wine that you bought out when you were tasting because it's a Tuesday and it's not a celebration, or you're not, maybe there's, we have so many bottles, we ourselves, and we fall into the mysticism of wine, of like keeping it and cellaring it, and like this is a special occasion wine, and then all the time we don't open it, we save it for friends, and then it's corked, or we should have drank it 5 years ago, or and like the hype is actually almost setting you up to be disappointed. Like, let's just drink it when we feel like we're going to enjoy it when we wanted to, because the chances that it's going to be exactly what we wanted might be higher.
When David Harrelson, who's on here, said probably one of the most profound things that I've heard in wine, in life, I guess in general, is like it's an endorphin stealing. When you tell somebody that something like this is really great, and you open it up and you're like, well, it's not as great as you said it was. Right. It's like it's sort of joking, because when we were starting to make our wines, I was like, people are like, well, what do you have here? And I was like, this is just some junk I make. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's, we make wine, like, it's a fermented beverage. It's not that complicated. And they drink it. They're like, well, this is pretty good. And I was like, well, I didn't say it wasn't good. But you're not opening up with like, oh, this is a pedigreed vineyard, and like I went to this. These are my credentials. These are the places that I've interned at, and this is this really special site that I work with, and it's a really impressive Pinot Noir. And you're like, well, it's good. Right. I mean, it's a good Pinot.
And maybe we're just jaded also because we've tasted thousands of Pinots, right? And so then you're like, the nuance between Pinot to Pinot, it's got to be...
Yeah, we're drowning in world-class Pinot Noir.
Or right? It's a terrible life, drowning in world-class Pinot Noir. But then I got sidetracked. So when I signed up for the wine tasting classes, I had actually set the goal to become a sommelier. That was my initial thing. It's a Somm movie, so I wanted to become a sommelier. But instead, we decided that moving to Willamette, becoming winemakers was way cooler. And so I kind of went with that. And then I recently turned 40, and at that time I was like, oh, well, maybe I should pick back up on my original goal of becoming a sommelier. And so I decided that I would take the W sets. And so Cyler's like, why? You don't need it. What are you going to do with it? It's not like you're going to go work in another tasting room or do those types of things. So, but I think it was just for me personally, like I wanted the act of studying and knowing and doing the things. So I kind of I had talked to other people who had taken it, and they were like, you don't need to start at 1. And I was like, what? They're like, no, like you could probably get away with just starting at 3. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take the middle ground. I'll start at 2. So I studied for 2. I got a couple other people to, just for fun, do it with me. And then took that test and it was fine. It was actually all online. I did it through Linfield, so I took the W set. And then the next one, then I did 3. So I sat through all those. Elaine was a really great teacher. I learned a lot about also my palate versus somebody else's palate, because really when you're sitting there and you're going to have to be correct, you're graded on whether what you're tasting is what you're writing down and what other people agree on. So that was also interesting. They all have a joke that teachers are the worst students, right? Because I'm willing to sit there and be like, I disagree. Like, sorry, Elaine, but how did you get pineapple out of that? I get peach. These are tropical versus stone fruit. So it was really interesting also just to have everyone there and talk about what they wrote down. So I took the test. I passed the tasting with merit, but I actually did not pass the written portion. So I'm resitting that on Tuesday, tomorrow. Tomorrow, yes.
You haven't done any studying yet?
I think what I decided was also just, I learned a lot about just what I wrote and the confidence of what you write. And one of the questions, I actually wrote the correct thing. And the second part of the question made me second guess my answer, and I erased it, which I should know not to do. I've been a teacher, right? I know that you always go with your gut, and I made all of the classic mistakes, right? I even at one point had written down 2 answers and was going to go back and erase one and didn't, so there's a lot of silly. It's okay. I'm going to retake it. It's going to be fine. I've reread the book. And then I think also, like we were saying, for me, reading the book, I've never been good at geography. But if I go there and I experience it, I have this is what it's like. So a lot of the W Set 3 is talking about what is it like in that place in order to make wine that tastes the way it does. And so I've really enjoyed, we've gone to Germany. We now spent a tiny bit in Alsace, only 2 days, but I think it still counts. And then we went to Piedmont, so learned a lot about DOCG. Just being able to be there and ask the questions, that you're wondering as you drive around, like, why are those vines planted like that instead of like this, and that's not in the textbook. So just the experience of going, I mean, I even apologize. I'm really sorry we're asking this question, but this is different than what we've seen in the past, or I've heard that it's like this. Can you explain it again? And but I mean, they're really happy to talk about. I learned a lot about Longhay and all the things while we were there just now, and so hopefully that's what the question is about tomorrow, because I should ace it. But if not, then I don't know. I think education for wine is just experiencing it. I mean, I think that's kind of the really cool thing about wine, is that it's always changing. You can never know everything about wine. There's a new region, there's a new vintage, the weather changed, there's a new technique that's come out. And I hope that people start embracing the fact that it doesn't have to be the traditional European style of wine. Like, America is the Wild West. Like, we can do pretty much whatever we want. Why are we not doing whatever we want? Why are we holding ourselves to these standards of Europe that we brought with us? So that's another thing that I kind of learned from the WSET, and is an idea I've had recently about education in wine. I've been an educator for so long, and then I'm in the wine industry. Perhaps this is something that I could pursue together in the future. And I guess I was really upset when I was taking the WSET about how there is one paragraph on Oregon, and yet there is pages about each individual AVA. Like, there should be a page about Eola Amity, a page about Dundee, a page about Yam. So I feel like that should be the next thing, is that we should, in our region, be embracing our wine, like American wine. There should be, I have become a little bit more passionate lately also just about the barriers to entry to wine. Even an American's ability to buy American wine is so hard. Like, I can't ship Americans American wine. Like, what? So maybe now that I don't have two jobs at the same time, I could become a little bit more involved with the Oregon Wine Board, and see what they're doing, because I know they're doing a lot of good work about trying to make wine more accessible to the American consumer. And I hope that there are people with time and money to help pursue that, because the three-tier system needs to go away. It needs to be abolished. It's antiquated, and is, I think, part of the reason that the wine industry is struggling. It's just not easy.
It makes it expensive.
Yeah, it makes it expensive. It makes access hard. And for us to continue to live on these European ideals is making wine more mystical. And we don't need wine to be mystical. We need it to be straightforward and seem easy and fun and not pretentious. So.
I also do recommend, we still are part of a blind tasting group.
Oh, yes.
You can talk about continued education, and some of the things that's most important for learning wines is having an opportunity to sit down with whatever group of friends you have. We happen to have a rather technical group of industry friends that we taste with, but like having themes or having, sort of dedicated things that you're trying to learn from each tasting, and then, even sometimes we'll have like a small presentation, just like, there's a little refresher on Barolo, right? And this is what we're drinking. But yeah, just having that opportunity to go through and try a variety of wines in a structured way is, I think, a really great way of learning wine, regardless of what your interests or what your skill levels are. I really highly recommend blind tasting.
So you decided that being winemakers in Lima Valley was cooler than being a somm, which 100% totally true. Tell me about pursuing winemaking then, Cyler. Obviously, you mentioned you had interned in some places, you started to learn. Tell me about the process of learning winemaking. What were the important kind of, milestones for like learning what you were doing? And when did you feel like you were ready to make wine commercially on your own?
I mean, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I've always been, I think one of the key things is being open to failure, really. I made wine for the first time thinking that it probably isn't going to be great, but at least I'm going to learn something, and it turned out to be quite good. And then I was like, okay, well, I should learn more about this at a commercial scale. I did an internship at Limmelson and learned, interns, like, you learn, if you're paying attention as an intern, you can kind of see what's going on. But like at the scale that we were at, like, I mostly spent time cleaning and shoveling. Like, there was a little bit of like, okay, you can work around a barrel a little bit. can kind of taste and smell ferments as they're going along and have an idea. But I think that not approaching it from having done it in school or doing it just the hands-on, like if you can start by making a couple of carboys or a barrel's worth at a time, and just go through the whole process where you're the one that's responsible for it. And so that, again, with working at Medici, we made 4 wines, like a barrel or so of each. And
But in year 2, we did the experiment with the barrels, right?
yeah, and then we also were interested in, so again, it's kind of starting raw. We did everything in what we could get. So I had some old oak, some old neutral French oak. I got food grade plastic
This is how you
drums.
do it with investors. Yeah, you just whatever you can get.
You're like, well, I can't afford stainless steel. It's really expensive, but wine's only going to be in there for a couple of months. So like, I guess plastic's fine. In year 2, we did an experiment with the same wine in plastic, stainless steel, and in neutral oak, and unanimously agreed that neutral oak was going to be best for us. So we ferment everything in neutral oak now, with very few exceptions. But yeah, I think that I really didn't make a wine that I thought was great until my 2nd or 3rd year, and even then it was like 1 out of 4 or 5 wines that I was making. My first Pinots were rough. I think 2016 I made my first Pinot Noir, my 3rd vintage that I thought was good. But I sold out of my 14 Pinot Noir and I sold out of my 15 Pinot Noir. Like, they were something that worked for certain people. Some of it was price point. We were a little bit, we're very reasonably priced. I mean, I had come from wholesale right before I got into winemaking at starting our own brand. And so I had that as an outlook for our business model, was like, this is a price point that I need to hit. This is a quality level that I need to hit, and then I can go out and I can sell it. I knew that I could sell it because I had sold, hundreds of different wines in the book that I was in before, and I knew price point, quality level, and I knew sort of that outlook. So we always started off with that being the goal. But in terms of winemaking, I feel like I really kind of got it dialed in terms of being comfortable with and learning from my mistakes in, I'd say, year 3. But it was trial by fire. Like, I recommend that in a lot of ways, because I think if you go in thinking that you're going to make great wine, or if you go in, having to make great wine because you've invested so much into it, or you've put so much into that aspect, that it's really difficult. Because even so, like I was saying, it's my 12th year making wine this last year.
We still learn.
I've got 3 or 4 barrels where I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on in here. And it's, the classic thing would be, okay, well, I could go ask somebody, and I've done that in certain vintages, or I could break one of my, sort of token rules. I could pull a sample and take it down to the lab and have them run a mass spec on it and figure out if there's something that makes sense. But I've never done that before, so I don't really have a baseline.
Yeah, and I think that's what also is really different about our wine. Like, we both have science backgrounds. We understand the chemistry of what's going in there, but at the same time, we really try not to utilize it to manipulate the end product. So
every time I've ever messed with a wine, it's messed with me back. It's just an absolute in what we're fortunate that, again, with the way that we have our brand structured, that like I can take a wine that isn't great and either blend it into something, or I can always, in the 12 years of making wine, I think I've had 10 barrels out of probably up to 1,000 barrels of wine that I've made in my entire career. Maybe 10 barrels where I was like, that can't be fixed. Yeah. But again, I didn't maybe talk about my degrees.
And they're also sitting outside. He won't throw them away.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that barrel over there? He's like, oh, that's that one we don't talk about. And I'm like, how is it still sitting there?
It worked out. As my degree's in resource management, I can't throw anything away.
Yeah.
So again, we talk about the pandemic probably too much, but like the pandemic hit and they needed people to donate wine to turn into hand sanitizer, and all those barrels she told me to throw away, I donated them to hand sanitizer. I got rid of half of the bad barrels I've made in my life in one truckload that turned into hand sanitizer.
Yep.
So they were used.
There's
2 or 3 out there now that we're not too sure what we're going to do with. But
but I do think that, I guess, as from the educator, you talk a lot about like the successful students and like what makes people stand apart. And it really is this idea of like learning means you fail. And I feel like somewhere that got lost in the last, so teaching for 18 years, you see the pendulum go back and forth and like really all of a sudden being like, no, like it's okay to fail. You don't need to be perfect. You don't have to get an A on everything. Like you are learning from this. And for some reason that's always been natural to the two of us. So like taking on something that seems scary and it's like, well, if we fail, it's okay. We just learned something. And so there have been big things. Like we didn't get a lawyer when we needed to get our conditional use permit here. And we went and represented ourselves in front of the county commissioners and we got a little burnt, but we learned a lot from it, right? And like, but we were still willing to do it. We still showed up. We put the time in and we were confident that like, no matter what, it will come out on the other side and we'll know something different. And so same thing during COVID. And then right now, I think the biggest thing for us is the non-alcoholic side of things. So, the person who approached us to make non-alcoholic wine, like we've told that story a few times now, but I think it really ties into that part of like, why did you choose us to do that? And really her response was like, well, if anyone's going to figure it out, you will. And so I guess that worked in the psyche because I was like, yep, okay, challenge accepted, I'll figure it out.
I do like challenges.
It does like challenges. So Cyler sat down and, we know how to use the internet. And that was before AI, right? I'm sure AI might be maybe we could type it and see what AI says about it. But, just using the resources of like finding, does anyone at all know? Nope. Okay. So now we go to the next step of what can you find in the internet and just calling people. I mean, I think a lot of people are actually scared to call people. We have a couple custom crush clients now.
Totally fun playing dumb. Yes. I don't know how this works. Can you tell me about it?
Yes, right. We have a couple custom crush clients, and like there's something, well, like, how do you know that? And we're like, well, because we asked. I don't know, like you go and figure stuff out for yourself. And there's some value in that of just like, well, you call and you ask all the people and like, well, how did you decide to use this cap company? Well, we called all the cap companies, we got a quote. Like you have to put in the time to do all that stuff. And that can seem really overwhelming, but that's what you have to do to figure out all the things.
And I think also, for me, not only from a creative standpoint in winemaking, kind of back to like the stages of becoming a winemaker, like I like having a baseline to look at the same. I would work with two of the vineyards we worked with every year for it'll be 13 years this year. 13 years. But then also that excitement about learning something new, so working with new vineyards, but also new varietals, and knowing that like, okay, there's a baseline to the way that we make wines in a process, but then taking and being experimental with it beyond that and seeing what the outcome is. So like also realizing that as a winemaker, you only have so many vintages in you, and doing something either the same way or consistently might work for you, but that doesn't make you adapt to vintages. It doesn't make you adapt to consumers. As it also doesn't give you that knowledge or base that you would if you had done an internship in both hemispheres for 10 years, or if you'd worked for multiple wineries, or if you'd worked in multiple regions. Like we have to, you learn through experience. And so providing yourself and being in a position, we're fortunate to be in a position that we can play around with different things in different vineyards each year and learn something from it. Like I had two vivid memories of making wine this last year, where I was out in the vineyard while the grapes were being picked and realized that my technique of how to process the fruit was going to have to change because of what I was seeing in the vineyard, and not being where the fruit shows up and you have to react, or you have to make a decision where you're like, well, no, I'm not even going to mess with that. I'd rather make something and say, okay, well, I learned that was a bad decision, or this is what the outcome was. Now I know it is. Same with like smoke wines in 2020. Like people are like, I'm not even going to bother making. I'm like, think of how much you could learn. Think of how much you could learn by doing this.
Yeah, that was a crazy year of education because we actually made the wine. And so what is going to happen? And we did the same exact block of fruit. We took some of it and we fermented on skins like normal, and then the others we direct pressed into white. So we had a white Pinot Noir and a red Pinot Noir, and everyone said get it off its skins, but it turned out that you needed the skins to balance the smoke. The white, one was just like, it was like drinking an ashtray. That was one of the ones that we gave away, right, in our need for hand sanitizer. So we learned so much. And then afterwards, seeing it, we recently got interviewed by, there was an article that came out in the New Yorker, but she came and we opened up like 8 or 9 wines from 2020. And again, on the street, the word was that the smoke will become more and more over time. And I saw the opposite. Some of them I was like, wait, I can't even taste the smoke in this anymore. But you wouldn't have known that unless you made it and then kept it and then opened it over time and saw what happened. And even when the winemakers got together, and they had all tried the different ways that they had used the carbon, or, it turned out that the milk add was the best way to remove the smoke out of the wine, and that sometimes
to be collaborative and sharing ideas is also.
But all those people had to choose to make the wine to be able to have that conversation afterwards. And so sometimes I feel like, decisions are made that are just kind of robbing you of the opportunity to have learned from it because it seems too extreme or it's not in the budget or.
So tell me about the initial goals when you're starting Varnum Vineyards. What were you mentioned you had a 5-year goal and you reached that. With the brand itself, tell me about what did you want to make? Who did you want to sell it to? How did you want to sell it? What were the kind of the initial kind of the ethos of the brand as it was getting started?
I think it changed over time. I think Cyler mentioned a couple times how he had just done the wholesale and so was aware then of like what the price point and value and where that was. I feel like within that 5-year goal, we knew what our end goal was we wanted the wine lifestyle. We wanted to live on a vineyard, look out at it, have a winery, be the two of us, raise a family. Like that was the dream, I guess. And then the nitty gritty of getting there was, number one, we both had full-time jobs. Like that, we're making wine on the side. How are you going to sell wine, right? A lot of winemakers they just want to make wine and they're not worried about how you're going to sell it. And that was the opposite for us. We were like, how are we going to sell the wine that we make? So at first, we also did have some ideological ideas. Like we were only going to make Pinot Noir and Riesling because those were our favorites. That changed very quickly because we figured out when in Pinot land, everyone has a $24.99 Pinot Noir that's delicious. And Riesling is the thing that consumers have the biggest opinion about. They've either had a really sweet one or a really dry one. Either way, Riesling's not for them. And you're like, oh, you just haven't had the right Riesling. But don't tell the customer that. So we got really lucky. Actually, 2014 was a beautiful vintage. And right at the end, the rains did not come. And there was a second crop that came. And the vineyard that we were living on allowed us to go out and pick the second crop. And so we made rosé.
And then late harvest rosé.
Right. And did we make Chardonnay that year?
We made Chardonnay. It was the same thing.
Why did we make Chardonnay?
Because Mike Zolnikoff was like, hey, I've got this beautiful Chardonnay. And I was like, I hate Chardonnay. And he's like, well, we'll give it to you. And then we can make out a deal later. Like, my wife loves Chardonnay. Just make some Chardonnay. We'll take some Chardonnay back and trade.
His wife, not me.
And then you convinced me also to make champagne.
Oh, yes.
We didn't want to get into the bubbles game. I was like, I've never made wine before at a commercial scale. This is the same thing. I'll take on the challenge. I also love my wife. Like, you want me to make the hardest style of wine that there is in the world on my first try? Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Yes. So we ended up making Riesling, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Rosé, and Champenois.
Champenois, sparkling.
Because Bobby was making wine there, and so was.
Yeah, so actually,
there were two people at Amity making sparkling wine.
Well, only one of them was. So Bobby Rowett from Mellon Mayer was making sparkling, and then Alex Nichols, who is now I think the associate winemaker at Wilkinson, but he was the enologist or lab guy at Argyle.
This was the frat house. You also learn a lot in the frat house, I guess. People come with different ideas. But yeah, so we made some sparkling wine. So then the next year, the wines that we ended up selling were Chardonnay and Rosé. And so we learned very quickly, we love Pinot Noir and Riesling. We're going to make a little bit, but we're going to move and become the Rosé and Chardonnay and bubbly brand. And so we pivoted right there in that first year. And the next year, though, 15 again was a nice, easy vintage. It was a little warmer. We joked that we came after all the hard stuff, right? 11 happened, 13 happened, and then 14, 15, 16 were fine. But yeah, we made Rosé and Chardonnay, and we got some wholesale accounts that picked those up. Rosé was kind of popular just with people in general.
It was right during sort of the Rosé craze.
The Rosé started to pick up. 13, we were 14, right at 15. The beginning of that. And then, Champenois is just sitting doing its thing. That's not an immediate product.
Yeah, the brand goal was like Tara mentioned, is the being on the porch thing, is like not wanting, even though we knew a lot about wine and I consider myself to be a wine snob, like that somebody who has very high ideals of what wine should be and how it should be made. But that approaches, our brand was always meant to be about access and casual and something that was for people. The made to drink, don't overthink concept, and then the porch wines, the idea of wine as a lifestyle that is more akin to casual drinking, that where you're drinking something for the activity or the moment or whatever it is, but not necessarily for the fact that it's the best, or it's this great pairing, or it's this whatever it is. It's really looking at wine as a beverage.
Right. It's not that the moment is about wine. Wine is just a part of the moment, and it's just adding to the moment. It's not the focus of the moment, right? That's not. We're not celebrating the wine. The wine is just helping us celebrate our daily life. I don't know.
Yeah. It's making wine that's part of your life as opposed to change your life.
Yeah,
That's what sort of the motto was. So we started off kind of with that approach, and then when we started getting in front of, I knew how to sell wine to restaurants and to retailers, and so that was sort of, it's bottom line driven. It's, I've got something that's unique, I've got something that's well priced, I've got something that you can have exclusive access to because it's a finite amount that I made. I mean, like my Chardonnay that I was selling for By the Glass, which was really one of our original successes, I made a barrel of it. Like, you can be the only person in the valley pouring this wine. Wouldn't that be cool? Right. And then it's good and it's well priced. And
yeah, and we also spent hours like staring at shelves. So we went out into every time we went to the store, we went to the wine section, we stared at the shelves, like what's standing out on the shelf.
We did all of our own
what is making you, So Cyler is the artistic side. He made all of the labels, the branding. There was a lot of late night arguments about even what to name your brand. Like, why put Varnum on it? And then is that good, or what if the wine sucks? Now your name's on it. What if the wine's really good? Now your name's on it. You go sell your name. Like Ponzi sold their name. That was a real argument we had at the beginning of but then what do you call it? And what's the story behind it, and what's the point? And a lot of people ask, what's a Varnum? And you're like, hi. He said,
that's my new thing now. Hi, my name's Cyler Varnum, and I make these wines. And they're like, well, where do you get the name from? Hold on. I do say that way too quick.
Yeah.
Let me slow down here. Hi, my name is Cyler Varnum. These are the wines that I make.
Yeah. So
Varnum.
I
have that name too.
The branding and the goal at the beginning, it did shift, and it has always shifted pretty quickly. And I don't know. I just
feel like the brand has been pretty solid from day one. What we've made and our confidence in presenting it hasn't changed. Our ethos for making wine for people that is casual and easy, and it's not built on pretense. It's not built on the fact that I'm a great winemaker or my pedigree. It's not built on the way that we farm or the terroir that we have. Like, I can geek out with somebody about whatever minutia of our wines they want to discuss, but we found
we love all those things he just talked about.
Yeah, and it's all is an impact in what we do, but it's not something that we're selling. We never open with that. We never open with the how much new oak we have or whatever it is. It's we make a beverage and it's delicious.
Do you like it? What do you taste?
And I always ask people too. They're like, well, what do you pour here? And I'm like, well, at this point I make 35 different wines. And they're like, well, that seems, I was like, yeah, it's a lack of focus. My wife yells at me all the time.
It's an accounting nightmare as the accountant.
But I also have something for everybody. And that's the idea. It's like, people are like, well, pour me your best. And I was like, that's not, what do you like? What do you like? And then, tell me anything about what you like. And then I can get to know a customer. I can get to know their palate, or I can teach them something about their palate through the course of pouring them wines. And that interaction to me is, again, making wine accessible. You don't have to come to the Willamette Valley looking for Pinot Noir and be like, well, I never really liked Pinot Noir, but I've heard really good things about Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. So I decided to come here instead of wherever else I was going to travel to in the world. And now, I don't really like Pinot Noir. You're like, you don't have to like Pinot Noir. We grow a lot of really great wines here. We may find out that you love Willamette Valley Tempranillo or Albarino or
Chardonnay.
Suddenly love bubbles.
Pinot Gris, Mueller Turgau, any of the other
Viognier. Pinot Gris, yeah. We make a little bit of everything.
What year did we start making I feel like the first time we made the porch label, it was on a large bottle. We moved to the wine in a beer bottle
2017. So we released the first wine in a beer bottle in 2017. It was sort of a stretch from I was importing German wine into Tucson, Arizona, and trying to sell it to Tucsonans, like really nice Mosel Rieslings. And one of the challenges was anything other than, Germany and Riesling. That's synonymous. Like, okay, if that's what you're looking for, it's a great spot. But we also had these like really great other esoteric varietals that Germany produced, and one of them was Müller-Thurgau, which is also a heritage grape here in the Willamette Valley. It's been planted here early on by many of the producers here. It's a grape that was thought that would be successful here and is widely being lost to and replaced by grapes that people have heard of, which is another unfortunate thing about the reality of Müller-Thurgau. And so we made a wine that was adjacent to Miller High Life. Mueller is U with an umlaut, and in scripture it just looks like two eyes in a row. So it's basically a carbon copy knockoff in a beer bottle of Müller-Thurgau Sparkling, and was meant to really kind of bring interest to that varietal, but also sort of showcase the accessibility of wine in a very clear format, which is a beer bottle, and also that it's half of a bottle of wine. I think that the other thing that we're seeing, not only being in the non-alcoholic wine game, but also being in the time that we are, where people are drinking less. It's not that they're not drinking alcohol; they might just be drinking less alcohol. Right. And we now make the widest range of half bottle wines that there are. I mean,
15 different.
It's a volumetrically, economically, and environmentally half of a traditional 750. So anybody can put wine into a half bottle of wine. They exist, but because they're novel, they cost more. And then you have to pass on the convenience cost to the customer. And that's also the antithesis of what our brand is. Our brand is about having even, fair access. And so thinner glass, lighter weight, more ubiquitous. I don't care about the shape. It's about the fact that it's the same high quality way of packaging the product.
It's easy to get beer bottles. But it's hard to get half wine bottles. 375 wine bottles are expensive.
The same price as $750.
So,
and they cost just as much to bottle.
Yes, but if you're getting half the wine, you want to pay half as much. So if the bottling and packaging doesn't allow you to do that, you've lost the point. So the beer bottle just made sense to us. And we initially put it in a brown bottle, and it looked like Miller, but it said Mueller, and it said the champagne of...
This is the beer of
champagne. The beer of champagnes. And everybody loved it. It was really great. It was Müller-Thurgau. It said we still make it. And early on, one of our biggest wholesalers was New Seasons, and they picked it up and they stocked it next to Miller.
It was a good idea to co-merchandise it with Miller High Life on an end cap. It took 2 weeks before we got the lawyer.
So we got a cease and desist letter. They had gone and stocked it and took a picture, and we're like, hey. You can't do this. But then actually our labels, Cyler sent back labels then afterwards. Oh, yeah. They're Miller approved. So our current Mueller time.
Labels are approved by Miller Brewing's lawyers.
Yes, here it is in the middle. And it's in a clear bottle. And it was funny because our, one of my beer loving friends was like, obviously that's not Miller, it's in a brown bottle. Because Miller comes in a clear bottle. Anyways, now our Mueller comes in a clear bottle, and it's approved by Miller Company. But that was fun. And Mueller is a delicious grape that more people should drink and appreciate. Yeah. And it's that's another, I guess, hot topics in the industry. About Pinot Noir is amazing. We love Pinot Noir. But then the Willamette Valley has kind of hung its hat on that, and to the detriment, thank you, that was the word I was looking for, to all these other wonderful grapes that could also grow here and have grown here but now have been grafted over. And there is a plethora of Pinot Noir on the market now. So, and Chardonnay is kind of picking up a little bit after that, but why not Riesling? Why not Müller-Thurgau? And it's disease resistant, it crops heavy. You can meet that price point that you're looking for to be able to provide it to the general public. I mean, I'm pretty sure Sokolblosser, their Evolution brand, I think, is built a lot on Müller-Thurgau. And so we're just missing out on some of these other varieties that you could have. We also recently just, Patty Skinkiss, right? If you've never heard her talk, she's amazing. And we recently, she came in to the Amity AVA and spoke a little bit to the growers about, what's next in this climate that you can't sell your Pinot Noir? Well, have you thought about grafting over? Have you thought about hybrids? Have you thought about all these other things? So, and the answer is no, because they're scared. We're so stuck on Vitis vinifera, but well, the wine industry is stuck on vitis vinifera. We do weird things, so we've been making different things for a while. But also, just to go, this is also go travel and go see what other places are doing and what's happening there. Big things that have happened for us on that are, just tasting different grapes and then why can't this grow in the Willamette Valley? There's all these other types of grapes that could grow in this climate. And then, we're the only industry right now, or the only agricultural industry that is not actively adapting to climate change with hybrids and experimenting and utilizing that. And I feel like this is the time. What should we do with that acre of unused Pinot Noir? You should experiment with it. You should graft it over to something and see what happens, because you have 3 years right now anyway until the market bounces back, right? So why not do other things right now that will overall improve the future of the valley's diversity of grapes, I think is a really great thing that she said. Also, you said something earlier about the different grapes. So when we were in Germany, one of the things that while we were there, we took our kids, we went wine tasting, and everywhere they went, they would offer them Traubensaft, grape juice. And you're like, well, yeah, they feel included. This is something that they like. The kids had no idea that, they didn't feel excluded. They were invited to sit at the wine bar, at the wine table, and we're all tasting wine or enjoying grape juice in a wine glass. And so we brought that back with us. So along with our other non-alcoholics, so we de-alcoholize wine, but you can just make grape juice, and so we did that.
Extremely popular.
And we have sold out of it. So the first vintage, we made Porch Pop, which was just pure Riesling juice. And you wonder though, you're like, is it going to be like Welch's? What's it going to taste like? But it's a wine grape. And so the acidity is so high that it balances that sugar. It's delicious. You should use it as simple syrup in cocktails. And then the second year we did it again. We've learned some things about pasteurization then, right? So new things you've learned that you didn't think you would as a winemaker. So teach yourself how to pasteurize juice and then put it in the beer bottle, and what's the shelf life, and are people going to buy it? And then this last year we made 2 more. So I've been working with a new vineyard, Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm. Actually has 40 acres of grapes out there. You don't see them. You go look at the tulips and you don't even realize you just parked next to a vineyard. But they have some really cool hybrids planted, and they're doing some different things out there.
Normal stuff.
They have normal stuff too. But so we're getting Albarino from them, which is how we kind of discovered them and their grapes. And then this year we made Jupiter Juice.
It's an Arkansas hybrid.
So in Arkansas, but it just sounds cool. Jupiter Juice, right? So
It's an Arkansas muscat hybrid, a pink muscat varietal.
and it is delicious.
It's delicious.
If we open it, people buy it. They're so surprised, right? Again, with the don't overhype it at the beginning, because their expectation of what this juice is going to taste like is so low that they're just ecstatic. And so not only do they get a sugar high, but they get the endorphin rush of this is delicious, and then they buy it.
They buy it for themselves. They buy it for their grandkids. We made it for our children, and have found that it is actually more successful. Granted, we generally have more access to adults, of course, than children, but people are buying it for the kids, and then it makes it inclusive, and making wine country, but also wine in general inclusive to different ages is also, in some ways, I don't want to equate it to candied cigars, but it's a gateway thing to make it where kids feel included in wine country, and it's not something that that their parents do or that they rebel against because they didn't have a good time when they visited. It's something that is another way of trying to make it where it's an important part of our community. It's an important part of a lifestyle if you choose that lifestyle, and it shouldn't be something that initially gives you this negative vibe as a child. Again, the idea of agriculture and
there's all these, campaigns right now of why wine? Why choose wine over something else? Why, come over October. Wine has been part of our history forever, the culture. But that isn't true of everyone's experience, right? My why wine is because there was wine on the table. I went to wine country as a child. It was imprinted, but that is not everybody has that at home. So then, what are those people? What ends up being their entry into wine? And so I feel like if you don't make everything as inclusive as possible when they happen upon wine, you're going to lose them because they don't have that kind of romantic or just daily ritual part of it in their memory as a child. And I think we we don't always realize just how important those times that we kind of don't remember, but they were a feeling that we had, are so important then when we become adults and they become the habits and the rituals that we have then. And so, yeah, like if you're going out to wine country and you have to take your kids with you, and then you just had a terrible time because your kids were miserable the whole time, you're not coming back to wine country, and neither are your kids. And so I feel like that is like this 20-year-olds with kids, like it's a big thing.
It's an important thing to us too, because we also have kids and we travel with them too. So it's learning from what works for you. Right. It's sort of in some ways also like making your wine and your brand about the demographic that you are, the things that are interesting in you. It's not just about, again, making the best wine in the world. It's about having the wines, the styles, the presentation, the experience that mimics what you would want. You put your own ethos forward.
Yeah, I recently also went to like a presentation about the WVWA had put a lot of money into figuring out who is our target consumer, and then they release the target consumer, and you're like, oh, it's myself. Like, all right, so I just need to market wine to me. Cool, I think I can do this, so it's just an interesting, it was a male, and I was like, really?
Phil was from Arkansas, I thought, wasn't he?
Yes, Phil was from the East Coast. He has 2 kids. He's in a similar price bracket, went to college, blah, blah, blah. It was interesting that it was that one that their study had come out as a male, because then the 2 presenters after that were like, well, women drink all the wine. They make the decisions of what's purchased at the grocery store, so women are your target. So I just kind of glossed over that they presented it as a man, and I was like, no, it's me.
It's Phil's wife.
It's Phil's wife, yeah, because he's really taking his wife out to wine country, right? Like he's planning their escape anyway. So, but yeah, there's just so much. Yeah, we're just always on the lookout for like the consumer and what is happening, and then trying to integrate that pretty quickly. Even on Saturday, a Gen Zer rose their hand and said something that I had never heard. They said third spaces. So what about third spaces? I had never even heard that term before. And then, it's like, actually, I would like you to come in and talk to me about third spaces. Maybe we do have an idea like that. We just didn't realize there were people out there who even wanted it, because it wasn't the traditional millennial, because we're millennials, right? So that was, you're always learning. You're always taking in the consumer and what they want and what to do next, and then change it. And you have to do it quickly, although it can be lonely to do it quickly. So you're the first in the world to put wine in a beer bottle. It's kind of weird. It's confusing. People think we make beer, and you're like, no, it's wine in a beer bottle.
It's a wine cooler.
No, it's not a wine cooler. I promise. It's not a Zima or a, Boone's Farm or a malt. But yeah.
Now we make non-alcoholic. So all the non-alcoholic wines are in beer bottles.
No, sorry. Yeah. So also the first, we're going to make non-alcoholic wine. Also kind of lonely and weird in that you think it's growing quickly, but also just that to do it first is a weird place to be, because you have no one to compare yourself to. You're waiting. Is anybody paying attention? And also just the whole, like, everyone expected, like, is take off immediately, right? Everybody's watching what's happening.
Yeah,
is it taking off?
And they're like, I don't think they are.
Yeah, and so then we go to all the wholesale accounts and we go to sell it, and they're like, I don't know, maybe. And you're like, I'm sorry, wait, so now you're actually educating the wholesale market and other people of like why they need the non-alcoholic on their list before they realize they need it. Mm-hmm. And now we're 3 years in, and now they need it. But now there's also multiple ones on the market, and the other wholesalers who have the time to go out, and so now we go out to a restaurant, that same one we originally went to, and you see one from Germany on there, and you're like, what just happened? Oh, that's because they're using Galaxy's book, and Galaxy has these in there, and you're like, all right,
we
so
love
time.
Galaxy, by the way.
Yeah, we also order from Galaxy, but I'm just saying, like, they have dedicated people, like we don't, we're self-distributed. Mm-hmm. So this is also the hard part then of doing everything yourself, is that you can't be everywhere at once. Yeah. So we aren't paying someone to go out and sell our wines all the time and be in front of the wholesale market constantly. So of course someone else is going to come in and put it on your market, or on their, come in and steal that spot on placement on your list. And so then you're like, well, I came 2 years ago, but it was 2 years too early. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a word for this, where you're like the early adopters, and then, but whoever is like really at the beginning, you're spending a lot of time trying to educate people why they need it. And
the sacrificial lamb.
Sure, yes. I feel like we've put ourselves in this sacrificial lamb place quite often, yeah. Like, well, the first to make like Pinot Noir rosé, like that was our thing really early on the beginning. Then we moved to bubbles really quickly, and like we did lots of forced carbonated bubbles, and then
Pioneers in forced carbonated sparkling as well.
Yes,
I love forced carbonated sparkling. That's a whole different subject.
oh yeah, we could talk a lot about our experiments and what we've learned.
What's happening in the world of sparkling wine in Oregon right now?
Yes. Yeah, like we said, that first year we made Champenois method as well, but then we also started making forced carbonated. We do both. And we've started trying to blend the two ideas of winemaking into both. So like how do you get the result of a champagne method without the time in the forced carbonate? So we've been...
the same amount of time, just more straightforward techniques.
Yes, which maybe we don't want to share on this podcast. But that we've been experimenting with. So yeah, and then the beer bottle thing still hasn't taken off. I think it could. It's just...
There's so much tradition in wine where if you do something different, it can be revolutionary eventually. But initially, with all props to Union Wine for putting wine in a beer can, but it's the same concept. Like it takes a while to convince people that like this is a thing, it's okay. The same with the beer bottle. I mean, it's a glass vessel. It's not even like it was a huge jump. It's just not the right shape. Like it doesn't register with you on a social level. That's also, again, it ties into what our branding is meant to be, is it's the idea that you can walk around a party and you aren't being shamed because you've got a wine glass and everybody else is drinking beer. You're like, it's in a beer bottle. Like, yeah, it's cool.
Because that's the thing, you're like being...
Now you walk around a party with a full regular bottle of wine, you get shamed in a totally different way.
Yeah, like I was the girl who brought wine to the party, right? Like I was the wine snob. I didn't fit in. Like you can't just you can bring a cooler of beer, but bring wine, you gotta bring a tool. You got to open it. You got to bring a special glassware.
Laws are open. Twist offs. Everything we do is twist off.
So yeah, twist offs are a big thing we do.
Made by hand. No tools required.
Walking around the whole bottle of beer at a party is a power move, but you do get funny looks.
Yes.
So the non-alcoholic, you mentioned early adopters of non-alcoholic. Tell me about the decision to do that and the process of figuring out how to make a good NA wine.
Yeah, I mean, Tara alluded to that a little bit, but yeah, we were approached with the idea by Megan Markell of Well Played Wines now and wanted to start her own brand, and she reached out to us again. She brought the idea, and I remember telling her that I thought it was a terrible idea. Like, why would you do that? But she made the point that, this is something that's going to be very challenging to figure out. And we think that, playing to my ego, we think that I think you'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take on that challenge. I mean, one of the three major components of what makes a wine is alcohol. If you take that out, what do you have left? You have flavor and acid and water, which is not a lot to work with. And yeah, we bought every non-alcoholic wine that we could put our hands on, which even 5 years ago, there were like 35 in the whole world. Yeah. We went and did that experiment again a couple of years ago, and I think the number was up to 150 that we could put our hands on. We keep trying new ones, but then we did the research, looking around at different ways to de-alcoholize wine. We tried wines that were made with the different techniques. We interviewed the companies that were providing these services and went through sort of the methodology. And then we ended up choosing one of those that we thought was the best, which was Bev Zero out of Santa Rosa. It's a spinning cone vacuum distillation system. It is the least invasive way of getting alcohol out of wine. We de-alcoholized our first wine in 2021, spring of 2022, and it was good, but we weren't happy with it on its own, and we opted to make a low alcohol wine as opposed to a non-alcoholic wine. So we blended some wine back into the non-alcoholic wine and made a low alcohol wine.
In addition to that, it becomes a food product, and you have to get an FDA label, and we weren't quite ready for that piece of it as well. So that was another reason that we decided to go ahead and add a barrel of Pinot Blanc back to it, and we made Porch Light. So it's a 3.5% alcohol wine, which then is a whole nother thing in the wine industry. Like, let's talk about how anything between 0.5 to 7 is also not wine. So under 0.5 is now food product, it's a non-alcoholic whatever. 0.5 to 7 is cider, and wine can only be 7 to 18? 7, what's the high?
20.
Oh, 20-ish, right? Because you could have fortified wines. So So what is this weird? So we just sold it through the tasting room. That's it. Like here, it's like a farm stand product, right? The light.
Learned a lot from that de-alcoholization, and we're able to put together a blend in 2023 that we released in 2024. Anyway, we made a de-alcoholized wine that we were really happy with, from learning what we were making, how the de-alcoholization process happened to it, and then what we wanted to improve upon the next time, and made some adjustments. And so the second time we de-alcoholized, we made what was Oregon's first non-alcoholic wine, and it was delicious and very well received. And then we had a bunch of people that were interested in the idea that reached out to us. And so again, sort of a community of people that kind of reached out to us, each kind of for their own interests, of course, trying to figure it out for different reasons. But it propelled us with extra interest to be able to collaborate with other producers and bring in some of their wine, in some case, mix in some of ours, and blend and make several different non-alcoholic wines in year two. And we were able to then have unique products for other small wineries that were interested in it, as well as learn from the process of tasting what theirs tasted like, and then what it tasted like after, and then different opinions and ways of finishing the wines. And the logistics of all this that he's skipping over is crazy, because these are all still small lots, but yet you have to have a minimum to even turn the machine on, to run the machine, and you have to truck it to California over the mountains in February when it probably snows in an IBC. So there's like a lot of weird in here, and like, how do you make, so people want, it has to happen in a week. And it has to make, because once you take the alcohol out, it's no longer protected, so it instantly needs to be bottled. But we're taking it all the way to Santa Rosa. So we have to ensure that the bottling line here at Castile we're on the list, they're ready, we're gonna immediately come back, it's gonna be filtered and it's gonna be put in bottle. And then if you want any time in between there to adjust it, right? Like, what did it come out of the machine like? Is it drinkable? Do you wanna add a little bit of sugar or juice or something, like, because it's so austere now? And then if you do that, will it be filtered and bottled in time for it to not start fermenting again? Because now it's not going to be under 0.5 and it's no longer a non-alcoholic product. So it's really one of the most stressful 2 weeks of like time. And then after we made the first one, the white one, and it went really well. And then we wanted to do a red, right? People are like, well, what about red? Red's really hard. And you're like, we have no idea. Yeah, this is going to be hard. How do you make Pinot Noir taste like Pinot Noir without alcohol? So we got lucky that we ended up taking 3 different Pinot Noirs from 3 different winemakers and taking those down. But it also allowed us to make rosé, because otherwise you're committed to, like, the whole thing has to be rosé going in and be rosé coming out. So instead we de-alcoholized white and we de-alcoholized red, and then we made that blending decision when we got back here, and then we bottled it to make the rosé. So the other thing that was really cool about that was that we learned when we did the 3 different winemakers was, when you de-alcoholize it, you get out alcohol. And we bought some of the alcohol back, and then we came and we tasted each one of the spirits from each of our different lots, and the spirits tasted different. So that whole idea of, like, you know, that we talk as wine nerds about, like, this Pinot Noir, you know, tastes slightly different in this one, and the terroir and all that. Well, it's accentuated in the spirit. You can taste. They were all the same vintage Pinot Noir? No. They're different vintages, but yeah, you know, we talk about whether you're going to have like a more floral style or a red fruited Pinot Noir versus a more robust or dark fruited or structured or tannic style, but you could taste that in the alcohol components themselves, which is really fascinating. Cool. Which you would never know unless you would never know unless you give yourself the opportunity to learn from that. Right. And that was the other, that's really cool. Been a fun part of the process. And then we de-alcoholized one more time after that. I learned a lesson. I started a second company with family members / investors, and then it went away as soon as it started. But so I did learn a lot about having partners that aren't your husband, and then we do everything. And then what is it like to have a board and to create a company and then to do all these other steps, and then to have other people having opinions, and then. Anyway, but it dissolved very quickly because I also realized that maybe we didn't want to be a consulting company, but someone should do it. It's just not us. We're good with what we're doing. We're good with what we're doing. Someone else should start a non-alcoholic consulting company. Winemaking. Non-alcoholic winemaking consulting company. We're probably still going to do a little bit of it, but
we'll see.
mostly trying to help out.
As Varnum, we're going to do it as Varnum, not as a separate company. So, and just helping the community do it, right? Like other winemakers in the region who maybe are interested in it, they're welcome to come talk to us. Because that's what people did for us, right? When we first started making wine, that was one of the reasons we came to the Willamette, was the sharing of information. So
Support, just in general.
support. And that was actually one of the hardest reasons, I think, why our company didn't work out, that we just started and dissolved, was because then it was this idea of trade secret and you can't share anything. And but every time we open our mouth, like, we want to help people. Like, someone asks us, like, how is this done? And then all of a sudden our partners are like, you can't say that. And you're like, but okay. So it just became kind of disingenuous to us, and that's not our vibe and just how we operate as humans. And so I think there was just clearly the corporate world and protecting your ideas and how your everything works is just very different than
Learned a lot of acronyms.
how we live our daily life, and just freely giving information and wanting to help people and talking about how you do things.
So I don't know if I want to introduce myself as a subject matter expertise anymore. I'm like, I don't.
Right. It just became weird. And we were like, this is awkward. We can't do that. It seemed fake. And nothing about Oregon right now is fake. I hope it doesn't go that way. It's changing, right? Like the Californication of the Willamette Valley. The Willamette Valley. I think we could learn a lot from what's happening in people that are going before us. But, there's nothing wrong with keeping Oregon weird. And not even weird, nice. Open sharing of information,
Small, pure,
community,
honest,
yes, like
genuine. There's a lot of things.
just be good people, right? Yeah, I don't.
Shifted.
Versus the competitive nature of, like, I'm not going to tell the next door winery what I did to make my product better. The idea that if everyone is better, more people will come here, right? Like that is the goal, is like if you lift everyone up, the general quality in the entire valley will come up, versus like one or two people holding all the knowledge and not sharing it while everybody else struggles. Like that's the opposite idea of community.
You learned a lot.
A lesson learned.
Yes.
Well, on that note, tell me a little bit about where the Oregon wine industry is. You've talked a lot about kind of your introduction to it and how you've seen it grow a bit. Where is Oregon wine right now, beginning of 2026? Does it go from here?
Do you want the sugar-coated version or the real version? Or the real version?
Interesting. So I think that we've also alluded to certain aspects of this too, about how, a lot of what was taken in the American wine industry comes from Europe. And again, my early time in wine and looking at the old world as a benchmark and the paradigm that we measure ourselves against. And I remember something that Joe Swick told me when we were at Medici was that, I'm an American making wine in America, and that this is American wine. And I thought it was it was a bold statement for me. It was like, I think, my second or third year making wine, and I thought that it was an interesting thing. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but it never really occurred to me. But it's really in this last couple of years, honestly, kind of coinciding with starting to de-alcoholize wine. You take the wine down and have it processed in Santa Rosa, but then I have a couple of days that I can explore Mendocino and Sonoma and the Dry Creek area, and go to some other domestic wineries. And I've always had a respect for what has happened in California with wine, but have also always been a little bit sort of jaded on, again, the growth and the pretension that comes especially with Napa. And again, not throwing Napa under the bus, but even Sonoma can be that way. Anyway, but this realization that, like, as an American winemaker, I have also kind of come to find with absolute honesty that I think that America actually makes some of the best wine in the world. And I don't even want to preface it with actually. It was just sort of this thing that happened to me where I was like,
Actually.
there's no way that you could make an argument that America doesn't make the best Zinfandel in the world. Now, granted, they call it Primitivo in Italy and Kruznak Kanstelonski in Croatia, but like, if you were to kind of take an honest opinion from experts across the industry, I'd say, like, California probably makes the best Zinfandel in the world. I think that, there's a lot of debate, obviously, here in the Willamette Valley over Pinot Noir. I would say, honestly, comparing apples to apples, Oregon's producing some of the best Pinot Noir in the world, especially for the price point. I mean, Burgundy, obviously, is always going to be a classic. I'm actually more fond of Spätburgunder from Germany, but personal opinion. But what's happening in the both carbonated as well as traditional method sparkling, just sparkling wine in general as a category. I think that some of the best stuff in the world is being made here in Oregon, California as well. I think that if you look at the opportunity to explore that space through the traditional method, but also with the growing conditions and the variety of grapes that we are legally allowed to grow here. I mean, we were just in Germany and talking about like climate change, and I'm like, well, it'd be really cool if we planted Albarino in the Mosel. And they're like, yeah, that's hilarious, but the government would come and tear it out. And he's like, you just can't do these things, the limit to and the speed with which they adjust. So there's so much more opportunity here.
Should save us.
I think that American wine, Willamette wine, is probably one of the consistently highest quality regions across a wide range of styles of any place in the world right now. There's some really cool stuff happening in Australia, but looking at the concentration of interest, the number of very serious, very pedigreed wineries and infrastructure that's come into the space. Climate change, obviously an opportunity to adjust to that as well, but the styles of wine, the amount of time and the speed with which we've been able to get to where we are and the consistency and high quality that we're doing is really impressive on a world scale. And I've always kind of known that. Having made wine here now for a little over a decade, I've come to kind of really appreciate and been in awe of that fact, sort of not only been able to explore the region for a longer period of time, being part of it, but then also being able to kind of look more globally and travel and see other regions and talk with other winemakers around the world, just seeing kind of what the valley's become. But then also having been coming up here for, which only a little bit longer than a decade. I mean, the first time was coming up here in 06, 07, 08, 2006, 2007, 2008 to be specific. And how much the valley has changed just in that short period of time, and how much change is expected, and how, again, being different and innovative in the industry, being pro-change, but not in the regards to the way that the valley presents itself. I think that you can be a leader, you can be a high quality, you can be the best quality, but you don't have to be pretentious about it. You don't have to charge $1 bazillion for it. You don't have to put it into a cookie cutter package that's presented in a way that it's done in other regions of the United States. I think that what drew us here was, one, as everybody says, the community of the Willamette Valley, the potential and proven high quality that we have here, but also the people that are doing it honest, true, and very casual and passionate about what they're doing without it having to be pretentious. And that's one of the things that I fear for change in the valley. And again, I'm an outsider. I've only been here for 13 years. I have no right to dictate what direction the valley is going, but that aspect of it being something that is humble and passionate at the same time is also something that makes the Willamette Valley unique, and that I fear can be lost through the fact that we are making some of the best, if not the best, of several categories of wine in the world. It's tough to be the best and to be humble.
I've had a lot of thoughts while you were talking just now. One of them brought me back to, in 2006, I was a grad student at U of A, and 6 of us rented an RV, and we drove to Napa without an appointment. And we drove around and we stopped at a winery. And when we walked in, the lady was really nice, and she gave us a map of Napa and said, go to these other places. And we drove our RV and we showed up at each of those other places and walked in and afforded a tasting room without being in the tasting room. And we bought wine, we tasted wine, and we didn't have an appointment in 2006 in Napa. I have picture proof of it, of me doing it. And that is gone now. We tried to go back recently without an appointment, even as winemakers from the Willamette Valley. We even pulled our industry card, could not get in. And I fear of that for the Willamette Valley, right? And I think that was kind of what he was saying, was like, when we got here, that's what you could do. Then we were kind of trending towards the Napification, right, like of the Willamette Valley, of big tasting rooms coming in. You have to have an appointment. It's more expensive. It looks fancy. It's pretentious. You have to know a lot about wine. And there, I think, is a space for that. I'm not saying that that's bad. I just think that then COVID came and everything shut down. And when it reopened, it was just more convenient to have appointments. You know how to control your staffing. It is really better for those small businesses or big businesses to be able to say how many people are showing up for the day. This is how many staff members I need to prep this. I mean, that does streamline things, but you then didn't make it as easily accessible. And the Oregon community was used to being able to drive out to wine country without an appointment, and that has not returned. I hear more and more people who are like, we're walk-in friendly. So they're trying to put that message back out there, which is good. But I think it's still kind of severed some ties with a lot of our local community. Yeah. And so tourism to the Willamette Valley is very important. I think it's the #1 topic at WVWA and all the other wine industry right now, but also like getting our local community who's going to sustain you through January right now, getting them to come out to wine country. I mean, and we've had a lot of nice sunny days. This would be great if people came out today, you know?
Weather shouldn't dictate it.
Well, but it does, you know,
We've turned away from our local community, I think, a lot. It's always, wine industry's always been a little bit pretentious, and it's always been a little bit standoff, and it's always been a topic, I feel like, in Oregon. There's this sort of slightly more pretentious thing that's come in, and I think that's, again, how you carry what it is that you're presenting about wine and why it's important to make it that we're fancy farmers, but we're still farmers. We grow and produce a product that is a major industry here. It's a major part of what we do, and we have a lot more in common with each other than exclusion, and that continuing to make it different, to make it fancier, to making it higher barrier is not helping.
In our mind, we could be wrong. Right? Maybe there's so many people are going the opposite way. There must be something to it, you would hope. But, you know, I feel like we also kind of predicted this unsustainable growth of the Willamette Valley since we were one of the ones that were part of that, right? We decided to make wine in 2014, and it went from 400 wineries to 1,000 in that 10 years, and we're one of them. So you see that you're amongst this amazing amount of growth, and it was unsustainable, right? There had to be a stopping point. There was also these amazing crops and bounty of the vintages, and people overmade wine because why not? We're selling wine, we're growing, we are going to be able to sell it. And then that kind of dropped out. And I think that started to drop out before COVID, and people kind of saw it. And so I think that's why then during COVID, a lot of people made the decision to not make wine. And then it was like, oh, everybody's drinking. And so then we kind of forgot that we were scared a little bit. But they should have been still scared the whole time. They shouldn't have made some of the decisions that they made. Even ourselves, we were like, oh, well, that's cool. We just sold all that wine. I guess we'll make the same amount, right? Again, the next year. And then it did drop, right? And we've dropped down. So when we talk about, really, it's a return. Right now, we're down, right? Like when the wine industry says that, you're down 21, 22 levels. Because when people came out of COVID, they went out and they drank a lot. But I would say if you look back and you compare to 19, it's maybe not as dire as they're saying. It's just that we saw this amazing bump. We were really hopeful, and then it went back down. And I think Oregon is very different. I don't think it can be lumped into the California and what's happening there. I mean, when we drove through California in March, there was literally machines just tearing out vineyards, right? And you're like dying, and thousands of acres of vineyards are being torn out. But again, I think you also have to realize that vineyards, just like any other, are agricultural crop. And if you have too many of them and you're not able to sell it, that's what happens. It happens to apples, it happens to hazelnuts, it happens to all the other things. Even like, where did all the apple vineyard, or the apple orchard at the end of our road is gone? Because they couldn't sell it. The cider industry dropped out, right? Where are all the plums? Isn't this walnut city? Where are all the walnuts, right? So I feel like agriculture in general changes over, and the wine industry is not as
we look at
used to it, right?
Industry, but it's an agricultural
right?
industry.
Like having a vineyard that's been there for 40, 50 years, there aren't many other agricultural industries that are like, yeah, that's been there for 40, 50 years. It has changed with the times and the demand. So I don't know. I think a lot of you maybe take it into a bigger perspective. I do think the wine industry itself needs to identify, right? The Gen Z is coming. Millennials are different than the boomers. Gen Z is different than millennials. It's going to happen. Is it going to happen quick enough? Are the companies holding the biggest share and the money going to realize it fast enough? I was happy yesterday. I think maybe we'll end on, I'll end on. Yesterday I'm watching the playoffs of football, NFL, right? And like, go barefoot for being like, here's your glass. The commercial was literally like, they're at a party for watching the football games, and someone brings wine, and they just pour it into whatever vessel they had. Thank you. Like, who cares? Just pour it into the glass and drink the wine if you want to drink your barefoot Moscato.
Yeah. Cupcake's doing some really good stuff with branding too right now.
Or was it Cupcake? Dang it. Sorry, Cupcake, if that was you. I'll have to I'm sure it'll come back on the Super Bowl.
It's barefoot.
It's barefoot, right?
Barefoot's the one
They had one in the Super Bowl last year.
Official wine of the NFL.
See?
Which is, it's a bold move. I
Right,
love
and
it.
we can't do that. We're so small. As much as I would love to take our porch wines and be like, hey, NFL, hey, Taylor Swift, I don't know. Here, drink our porch wine on your porch, and then
Elton John.
I can even make enough wine to sustain that. But the bigger companies can, and so we really do need the bigger companies who are able to offer the entry level, the gateway wine, the barefoot Moscato. It needs to be there. It has to have a place on the shelf because it's a beverage. And then if you decide you want to spend a little bit more money on and know exactly where the vineyard was and see it and drink that wine and have that experience, those all have a place at the table. It's just, I think also like we don't need to fight amongst ourselves. It's also not productive. Like, anyway. Yeah.
Last question for you then.
Oh, there's another, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all right.
About you. So what's you make you're 13 years in, your 13th vintage coming up.
Yes.
You are making a lot of SKUs. What's next? Where does Varnum go, and what what have you not done yet that you want to do?
Oh, wow.
I mean, I do have a bucket list of grape varietals.
He's making Grenache. We just made Grenache.
Grenache, yeah. I want to do, so there's
tasting
several
okay.
grapes I want to make. We look at our future as kind of continuing, it's like continuing with the same, which is to change. So we will continue to adapt to the consumers and explore the consumers' styles and the things that they're interested in, because they are always going to come up with something different to make. I mean, we're going to release 5 or 6 styles of wine this year that we've never made before. We're actually making a wine cooler. So
we made a wine cooler. That's right.
We made a wine cooler.
We did it. It just hasn't been released yet.
Yeah.
And go Texas. I don't know. We might go to Texas.
Texas. Like,
gonna
you
take
put some peach in that wine, we'll buy it. And I was like, I can put some peach in that wine.
Right? We literally, someone was like, "Why don't you do that?" And you're
peaches.
like, "I don't know. It's because it's not fancy wine."
That's perfect.
We're
continuing
Porch Peach is coming.
Porch
if you're
Peach is
listening
coming.
to this podcast, Porch Peach is coming in May.
So yeah, new styles, new varietals. I'm really interested in too, like looking at, people talk about, they're going to retire from the industry and I'm going to retire and I'm going to make wine, right? I'm going to retire from whatever I'm doing and I'm going to make wine. It's a retirement goal.
No.
And then, but then I think about like what people are like, well, I'm nowhere near the age that I should be thinking about retiring. But like, I think about, like how long am I going to make wine? It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Physically,
Every year,
I
like,
physically
harvest
shovel tons of grapes 2 or 3 times. Like you make 40 tons of grapes in a year, that means you have to shovel them 2 or 3 times. So, shovel 120 tons of grapes in a year.
In 1 month.
So there's,
maybe you're lucky it's 8 weeks
I look
long.
at, my future, and I realize that one of the things that I actually want to be a winemaker, like my wife mentioned at one point, where you just kind of point at things and say, and it may not be at the scale that I am right now. I would like to make, I joke, but I would like to make the great wines of the world. I'd like to develop contacts with people in Rioja, in the Mosel, and be able to go in and say, hey, I would really like to make an Edina Trepschner Spätlese Riesling. That's a vineyard, by the way.
But not really make it.
But I want
curate it.
Yeah, I want to be present during.
We're gonna white label this and bring it to America.
No. I want to be present during when the fruit comes in and futz around with it and taste it as it goes through the process. I've never actually tasted a Mosel Riesling as it's going through the fermentation process. Same with like Rioja or Cava or some of the other things that I'm interested in, and spend the time in the region during harvest and experience it like as a reverse intern, where you're not really there because you're shoveling grapes. You're there to experience the culture and learn more about wine, be present within the industry still, and have a product at the end of that you're like, yeah, this was the 100 cases of Mosel Riesling that I made from this vintage, or that I was present during the making of.
Yes.
Maybe involved, depending on how much the actual winemakers want you to be in the building. And there could be varying degrees of that too. I know that we've developed contacts where I could probably go into a friend's cellar and be like, hey, I got a couple of tons of whatever. Is it okay if I process it in the corner over here, right?
Yeah. So I think what he's getting at is it's not really our goal to be big and be huge. It's even really just our goal to like kind of maintain where we're at. If not, then step back and have other experiences in wine. And you still have to have a living, so you have to make money. So how are other ways that you can do that without maybe producing the wine yourself, but having a product to sell? And you've established a place that you're at. People know where to find you. You have a wine club. You have followers who trust your palate. So maybe you curate a wine club of cool other things. The other ways that we can be in the industry and enjoy the parts of it that we love, but not necessarily having to work a harvest.
Yeah, and share our knowledges and our experiences as well, maybe also through travel, like doing tours of some sort as well. That's something that's crossed our minds.
Yeah. So
what about you? What do you want to do with Varnum?
I know. So I'm in this weird different space of like, I had a career for 18 years and I stepped away from it to do this. I don't know. I mean, we're doing this. We're going to see where it goes, but like at any time I could step back into the education space if I felt like it. I could marry the two like we talked about and maybe come up with some, I don't even know what textbooks are even out there like WSET for America. Does it exist? And if it doesn't, maybe that's a space, because I'm really just more and more I'm finding like, why are we as Americans, even me, I still tend to go and I buy foreign wine. I'm traveling abroad. And to be fair, we have traveled to the American wine regions as well, almost all of them, so I can still say that. But did I choose this last time to go to an American one again? No, I chose to go back to Germany and to explore a new one. So like, why is that? And and I still actually feel like even as American winemakers, you still gravitate toward the European model of wine, and that's what's in the textbook, and that's what's told to you. And these new people that are coming in, and you want them to work in the tasting room, and they're taking the WSET class, which is great, and they're learning all of the stuff about how wine is made, the process, why does the climate matter, but they're doing it in a European lens. Why not the American lens? Why not learn instead about the Willamette Valley wines, which is what you're going to be pouring? So I guess I kind of feel passionate about that, and that's a space. And if I don't take that, maybe someone else listening will take it for me and do that. I hope so. I don't know. Right now, I'm a mom, and I'm enjoying being a mom and a wife, and like having a small business and doing those things. And after that, it's going to happen. And I think I can't predict it because so far, a lot of the things that we've predicted have had to change anyway. So just go with the flow and pivot.
It's an extension of our
Come up with a new word for pivot and enjoy drinking wine wherever we are.
We're just not going to overthink it.
Yes. Yeah, but we do lots of weird things, which is, I guess, it's an in the moment overthink. Yeah, it is.
We're not overthinking it.
That's all the questions that I have for the two of you today. Anything I
you.
didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't cover today that you're hoping to cover?
I think there was a lot in there that you didn't ask.
I should also, even though it'll be kind of an odd thing, I have to thank Jessica Ainsworth for taking me under her wing when we moved here. That's how we got into the industry. So that helped get me to this point.
Oh yeah, Katrin and Jeff from Ponzi. Yeah, they were pivotal. They hired me with my weird resume of wine glasses. My wine resume was literally just my history of wine, and each one was a different wine glass. And they thought I was weird, so they hired me. And they taught us a lot about the wine industry as well. Yeah, that's true.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to share with us today. Thank you for sharing your space and your story with us. We appreciate it. And this, as you said, unseasonably sunny day in the middle of January.
Yes.
And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.